Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out.
Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and today I want to talk about lures that catch everything. I'm talking panfish, bass, walleye, saltwater species, stripers, trout, everything. I get this question all the time. They go, hey, I'm a beginner fisherman and I'm somewhere in this state, or I'm fishing this particular ocean, and I don't know exactly what species that you have in your particular ocean, but I can tell you from my experiences, I fished all over the place, and there's these same group of lures that consistently work for all species. There's colors that consistently work for all species, and there's kind of times of years to fish them and certain conditions that I'm going to explain today that all of these lures apply to, no matter what you're fishing for. So let's just get started off. We have a rattle trap. There's the small one. Here's the big one, and the size is strictly going to depend on the size of the fish in your area. Let's say you're fishing little tiny stuff and you find that you're consistently getting bigger fish, or you're catching a small one and you've seen big ones with them. Well, you're going to upsize in these particular categories. A little tiny Castmaster spoon, a little tiny inline spinner like a rooster tail, a little tiny clear swim bait, a little tiny jerk bait, a little tiny grub, a little tiny straight plastic worm. And you can look, here's a variable. Here's something that's called a Ned rig. Very popular for bass, but catches all species. And here's the micro size. This happens to be a trout magnet. Micro size, so look at it this way. The smaller you fish, the more fish there is in a system that are smaller. So let's take a lake, for example. There's always going to be more small fish than there is large fish. And by starting off small, you're appealing to everything no matter where it's located. Let's say you're fishing in an area that's known for big fish. I guarantee you it still has tons of small fish. So starting off small, if you don't know what lives there with these categories, is going to help you tremendously. So the baits that I want you to focus on with that lipless crankbait, that's the rattle trap that I'm talking about right here, this little tiny guy. Okay, we're gonna start off on the small focus first, because I said that appeals to mostly everything. Rattle trap, an inline spinner, a spoon, a little tiny jerk bait, a little tiny soft plastic swim bait, a 2-inch grub, a 2-inch trout magnet. So we're going to put all these larger ones over here. This is what I want you to start with. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 baits. If you have 7 of this little category right here, a small jerk bait, small trout magnet, small clear swim bait, small grub, small spoon, small inline spinner, and a small rattle trap, I do not care where you go in this country, out of this country, what river, what ocean, what bay, what lake, what creek, you will catch fish on probably the majority of this category right here. So when I have that little rattle trap right here, it's nickel and blue. This looks like a generalized bait fish, a shad, a minnow. They all have kind of silvery chrome appeal to them. A lot of them flash, they have flash in them, and that blue is a very natural color for the fish. Makes noise, vibrates. It's a fast moving bait that looks like a minnow, looks like a little tiny shad, looks like a little tiny bait fish that could be out in the ocean somewhere swimming around. This pretty much matches the majority of your bait fish. Now here's the benefit. It has a little noise to it and a little rattle. And you can reel down, you can slowly reel and move it at a slower speed. But if the fish are acting lethargic, and if you're casting this and you're not getting bit, you're gonna wanna go to something slower. If the water's a little bit dirtier, that little rattle can help. If the fish are farther away, that little rattle can help. Remember, clear, sunny days, that chrome also helps quite a bit. If the water was muddy, that rattling in there is going to help you. So this is why I chose nickel and blue for that little rattle trap. And the same thing applies for the bigger one once we get into that. Now, for that little tiny Castmaster spoon, that's all chrome, it's nickel. Now here's the benefit here. You can cast this out and slowly reel it in. You can cast it, let it hit the surface and reel it in so you can fish shallow across the top. You can let it sink, fish a little bit deeper. You can let it get to the bottom and hop it up off the bottom. If you're fishing from a boat or fishing from a kayak or down a steep rock wall, you can let it get to the bottom and you can jig it up. So that bait right there also looks like a panfish. It doesn't have any audio, which is nice in calm, clear water, and it's very, very tiny. I've caught everything from trout, bluegill, crappie, bass, everything. I've even caught a surf perch on these. I've caught flounder on these. From there, we also have that little 2-inch plastic grub. Now, this is not the color that I wanted to show you. A pure white 2-inch grub is probably the most versatile. Now, you see this little jig head I have in it here, and I'll give you a close-up of that. That little jig head with that exposed hook, the critical part of a grub is that you want the tail in the same position of the hook. You want it to be upright like that. The bigger the head, the heavier the head. The lighter the head, the slower it can move, but it also sinks slower. So if you're fishing shallower water, you want to use a lighter head. If you're fishing deeper water, you want to use a larger, heavier head. Now, the grub is very subtle. You strictly want to cast it and reel it real slow, and the tail's going to give you all the action you need. You don't need to lift it up and down. You can slowly lift it up and down if you want, but the key is just to cast it out and slowly reel it in. You could choose your same depth. Now, why would you do that over something like a Castmaster or something like a rattle trap? The grub is more subtle, looks more realistic. If you're not getting bit on one of the heavier baits that you can cast farther, you can go with something a little bit more realistic like a grub that can catch you fish in a scenario where these wouldn't catch you fish. Now, that being said, here's an inline spinner. Now, where does this apply with these? This puts off a lot more vibration. It's got the little hair off the tail right there. And it looks more natural. It puts off vibration. Something that's spinning and rotating and putting off vibration completely gives you a different feel for those fish. It gives them a completely different look. It's putting off water displacement that's entirely different than a lipless crankbait, than a spoon, and a grub. It's a spinning, vibrating motion that a lot of the time tons of different species key in on. So that inline spinner is very critical for you. Now, with those other hard baits, we have a jerk bait here. Now, a lot of people think you're going to cast out a jerk bait, a rip bait, an inline, a hard minnow, whatever you want to call it. It's a little tiny jerk bait. Now, where does this apply? You could say if I cast it out and reel it in, it's like just like a lipless crankbait. But where the jerk bait excels, if you're not getting bit on any of that harder moving, faster bait like a lipless crankbait or a spoon, you can reel this, twitch it, and you can stop. These pause in the middle of the water column. And a lot of the time when you pause a little jerk bait, it doesn't matter the species. All the bass guys know this. Trout love it, crappie love it, saltwater fish love it. When something's going along twitching, when you twitch, 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 and you're just reeling in the slack and stop, they love that stop. Cold, cold water, these things work even better. Cleaner water, calm, clean, cold water, they work even better. So I went with the natural bait fish color right there, a little nickel, little black, or a little nickel, a little blue. You want something very natural looking, and something with flash is going to work better in cleaner water with a sunnier day. Now, that being said, a little tiny translucent soft plastic swim bait. This is a 3-inch soft plastic swim bait right here. Where does this work? When there's no wind, when it is slick, calm, clear, sunny. Those are the toughest conditions possible no matter what type of fishing you're trying to do. That clear little 3 or 4-inch plastic swim bait is going to appeal to everything, and you can reel it super slow just like a grub, but these tend to outfish everything on super calm, clear, clean, bright sky days. Now, all that put aside, if you're not getting bit on any of those, a little tiny plastic like a trout magnet here. This thing's like 1.5, I don't even think it's 2 inches, on a little tiny jig head. You can cast it out there, let it fall all the way to the bottom, slowly lift it, or you can lightly shake your rod tip. This just looks like a little, like an oversized zooplankton or some sort of microorganism that's living in the water, some sort of tiny crawfish, some sort of tiny worm. This appeals to all of those bottom feeders. Now that's all the small stuff we covered right there.
Hang with us, guys. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, did you know that yours truly is now hosting Lucky Tackle Box's monthly panfish instructionals? And aside from relentless fish catching, I'll be breaking down the rigging and the gear you need to get going along the way. And of course, a few extra tips to help you score more fish on the goodies included in your box. So remember, the tug is our drug. So go visit LuckyTackleBox.com and get signed up today.
Bigger, better, badder. The evolution of the buzzbait is upon us. The Evolution Baits Grass Burner is a high-performance bass snatcher machine. High-end components, inline displacement, larger profile, balanced body for fast or slower retrieves, better deflection, and oversized treble hooks. You wouldn't bring a slingshot to a gunfight, would you? Find out more at evolutionbaits.com. Ever tried pulling a planer board next to your boat when trolling or fishing from a swift current bank? If not, you're missing out on one of the most phenomenal fish catching machines on the market today. With Yellowbird planer boards pulling your lines perpendicular to your boat, you can't help but catch more fish. Find out more by visiting www.yellowbirdproducts.com.
Did you know that P-Line makes specialized lines for all your fishing needs? From the super strong abrasive resistant CXX or the low stretch super stealthy CX Premium, or maybe you're looking for invisibility or super bite detection with P-Line's 100% fluorocarbon. No matter what your needs, P-Line's got it covered. To find out more, visit P-Line.com.
P-Line, baby.
Oh, you heard they got weapons of big fish destruction? Well, you heard right. BWA Fishing Performance is the newest company hitting the U.S. market by storm. With some of the sickest swim baits around and non-cookie cutter style lures that you could ever get your hands on. It's time to show these fish something new. Visit BWA.com. Attention Northern California anglers, have you been to Boat Country in Escalon with one of the largest selections of welded aluminum fishing boats from North River, Hughescraft, and now Crestliner? Chances are they have the right boat for you. And did I mention they have a full service center to take care of all your repair or boating maintenance needs? If you're a boat owner or just looking to become one, you owe it to yourself to check these guys out. Visit BoatCountryUSA.com or stop on by. We'll see you there. So for the larger baits, we fished the small baits, we caught a couple of smaller fish, and sometimes the bigger fish will eat these small baits, but a lot of the time, so why would you go bigger? Well, let's say you see that there's bigger fish in the area. We're gonna use those same categories. A lipless crankbait like the rattle trap, a little larger swim bait, a little larger grub, a little larger jerkbait. If the fish are getting bigger, go with a real big jerkbait. And you know, a little larger, this is the Ned rig. This is just a straight tail plastic worm, and you can see it's basically the same category as that trout magnet, but now I'm throwing something a little bigger and a little beefier. If you're finding huge fish in your area, you see big fish roaming around, or you know there's big fish being caught in the area, get something 2 or 3 times this size. That still applies. Now, why would you go larger if you're fishing these small ones and catching fish? If you're having fun catching those smaller fish and you're not catching big fish, let's say you have something like this little rattle trap here and this rattle trap here. Let's say you're catching 1 pound fish or even 2 pound fish on this. By throwing something larger like this appeals to those bigger fish in the system. So therefore, you're gonna catch less small fish on this and you have a better opportunity at appealing to a bigger fish. Bigger fish want bigger meals. If you miss that big fish by 10 feet with this, it's a French fry. He may not want to make the effort, but you've probably heard me talk about the double whopper. Now that big fish may want to make the effort for this. But understand there's less big fish in every body of water than there is small fish. There's always going to be, the majority of fish are always going to be smaller. So if you're finding out and you just want to catch fish, always start off small. Now, with those categories, let's get into color and why. Dirty water. If you could stick your hand under the water and you can't see it beyond a foot deep, that's dirty water. If you can't see your hand beyond a foot, you need solid white or very, very dark colors like a black or a dark, dark blue. Now, that being said, that also applies in very deep water. If you're fishing beyond 60, 80 feet deep, you can also go to a pure white that reflects UV light. UV light penetrates very, very deep where the regular sunlight that you see does not penetrate as deep. And off of the color white, white is the only visual color that we can see that reflects ultraviolet, unless you use something that reflects ultraviolet rays. But black and blue show up in very deep water and show up from a farther distance away. basically lighter oranges, reds. You can't see those. They look almost like a gray once you get 20, 30 feet away. They look more like a gray, where dark green, dark blue, black, you could still see the color. And white to the fish doesn't look like white. It looks like a reflective thing. So if you see a lot of those halibut guys with those big giant white grubs, that makes more sense. They're very deep. It looks like a reflective sort of fish thingy down there in front of them to see. Now, cleaner water. You always want to go with something more natural. That translucent right there looks very natural. Okay? Now, why would you use something like orange and chartreuse? Lots of juvenile fish have chartreuse. You see the top of that little chartreuse, little yellowish green in there? Lots of juvenile fish have that. So here you're kind of matching the hatch. You're thinking, well, maybe these fish are eating those. So chartreuse is a great accent color to get fish to eat. And orange looks like another common color found in juvenile crawfish, something that a lot of freshwater fish eat. I'm not sure in regards to crab. Maybe juvenile crabs have a little orange and a little brown in them at the same time. So keep in mind that in dirty water, you're trying to make it stand out, whether that's a white or a very dark color. In clean water, you're either wanting to go with a very natural looking bait or a translucent bait, or you want to clearly match what's swimming around right there. Now also with that dirty water, you want something that makes noise. You want less noise in cleaner, calmer days. If it's windy and choppy, if the water's choppy, noise can help. It also brings those fish up closer to the surface. On a calmer day, those fish tend to move deeper and they look for bigger shade lines. I don't care what the species, if it's clear, calm, clear water, sunny day, those fish tend to be just slightly deeper than what you could actually see down. If you could see down 40 feet deep, more than likely the fish that are actively chasing other fish to eat or actively chasing prey are usually just beyond how far deep you can see down. If you can see down a foot, more than likely those fish are probably in the 2 to 5 foot zone. So you want to keep all of this in mind. Okay, from there, let's get into the speed of your retrieve. Take a look at what we have here. Obviously, you could probably move this very fast. You can move this very fast, but you can pause it, okay? This is going to move faster naturally than something that you're slowly hopping off the bottom. When you get out to a new spot, you need to try fast. You need to try slow. You need to try pauses. Then you need to try crawling and just sitting it on the bottom. Hop it and let it sit there. And when I say sit there, there's a term called dead sticking. You need to dead stick a lot of the time. Fish sees it moving, sits there, comes over, and sucks it up at that point. These are all things you need to try any new place you go to, because you don't know if the fish are actively running something down. You don't know if they're waiting for an opportunity to capitalize on something that's stopped there and looks wounded. You don't know if they want something just laying on the bottom. So those categories right there present you with all of the options to show to those fish. Let's just take, for an example, let's take all of these small ones. If you want to throw these in a box in your car, put like a medium to a medium light spinning rod, something around 7 foot with 8-pound line on there. You can go out and you can throw all of these. And if you want to go like double the size of these, let's take a jerkbait that's double the size of these. You can either take a spinning rod and a bigger spinning rod, let's go with like a medium or a medium heavy, and you can go with something like 10-pound line or 12-pound line, and you can throw that everything there on the next size up. When you get larger than that, you're going to venture into your bait casting equipment. So if you want to go somewhere, if you want to travel, I have a 2-piece spinning rod in my car with 8-pound line, and I always have this assortment right here. If I happen to be traveling through a neighborhood and I'm like, ooh, I wonder what's there, or I go up to a coastal shoreline, I wonder what's there, I know I can more than likely figure out how to catch something in that spot with this assortment right here. I hope you guys enjoyed this information. If you have any questions, make sure to comment on there. I will try to get back to you. Sometimes it takes me quite a bit of time. Make sure to visit my website, informativefisherman.com, Informative Fisherman on Facebook and Instagram. Greatly appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.